welcome to the deep dive. You've sent over some really fascinating sources about qualitative research, especially now, when everything seems so driven by data, by numbers. It really gets you thinking, why does this seemingly softer approach still matter so much? Why is it so insightful? Let's get into it.
Exactly. And looking through those materials, qualitative research, it really just boils down to understanding the why and the how, behind what people do, what they decide.
Right.
It's about diving deep, using that non-numerical data, things like interviews, focus groups you mentioned, ethnography, case studies,
Yeah.
all that rich stuff in your sources.
Yeah.
It's less about, say, the sheer scale you get with stats and much more about the depth, the context, the emotions, the perspectives, things numbers alone just, well, they can't really capture.
Absolutely. So our goal here for this deep dive is really to pull out the core value. What's the unique role qualitative research plays alongside all that quantitative data we see everywhere? We want to uncover some maybe surprising insights and show some really practical ways it's being used that maybe aren't obvious at first glance.
Okay, so maybe let's start with why numbers, powerful as they are, don't always tell the whole story. Your sources do a good job highlighting these limitations of quantitative data. A big one is often that lack of context.
Right. Numbers tell us what happened, but the why, that often stays hidden, like that e-commerce example in the materials.
Oh, yeah, the cart abandonment.
Exactly. Quant data shows you, okay, a high percentage are dropping off. It can even pinpoint where maybe the shipping page.
Yeah, you see the drop-off point.
But it doesn't tell you why. Is it sticker shock from the shipping cost? Is delivery too slow? Or, do they just not trust the site?
Precisely. And that's where qualitative methods come in. Those interviews, maybe some user testing, you uncover the real reasons, the frustrations, the anxieties.
It's like the numbers show you the leak, but qualitative finds out why the pipe burst.
That's a great analogy. And it's fascinating looking at your sources, how easily we can oversimplify human behavior if we only rely on quantitative models. People aren't just averages, right? Our choices are messy, driven by emotions, culture, subconscious stuff we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And quantitative models, focusing on those averages and trends, well, they can sometimes miss the really interesting outliers. The unique insights that, as your sources point out, could actually be game-changing.
It's like looking at average rainfall.
Right. You miss the drought in one place and the flood in another. Both need totally different responses, but the average looks,
Yeah. Or trying to judge a painting just by counting the colors.
Yeah.
You miss the whole point. And the sources also brought up that tricky thing with quantitative data correlation versus causation.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Data can show a strong link, sure, two things move together, but proving one causes the other, that's often much harder. Qualitative research, though, because it's more exploratory, it lets you dig deeper. You can keep asking why. You try to unravel the actual mechanisms, the drivers behind the pattern, not just observe the pattern itself.
Okay, so quantitative gives us the big picture, the lay of the land, but qualitative, that provides the detailed map, shows the hidden paths, the tricky terrain.
Exactly. It's not about choosing one over the other. Your materials really emphasize this.
It's about synergy.
Absolutely. Qualitative research is a powerful complement. Think of it as providing the story behind the numbers in big data.
Okay.
Social media sentiment analysis you had articles on, that is a good case. Quant tools tell you, okay, overall sentiment is, say, negative.
Right, you get a score maybe?
But why? Qualitative interviews can tell you the specifics. What exact issues are driving that negativity? Or, conversely, what's genuinely making people happy? It adds the human voice back into the data.
That makes perfect sense. It's about, well, humanizing the data, right?
Yeah.
Reminding organizations that behind those metrics, those percentages, are actual people with feelings, hopes, frustrations. And that perspective, as your sources show, is critical for designing things people actually want and need. User-centered design relies on it.
And it's not just about making sense of data you already have. Often, qualitative research actually lays the groundwork for the quantitative studies that come later.
How so?
Well, those initial deep dives, maybe some exploratory interviews or focus groups, they can uncover the key things you need to measure, the important variables, the right questions to ask, the hypotheses you should test more broadly with numbers later.
Ah, I see. So it helps to make sure your big quantitative survey is actually asking the right stuff.
Precisely. It's like an insight compass. It points
Yeah.
you towards what's truly important before you start counting things precisely.
That's a great way to think about it. And I was really struck by the idea that qualitative can sometimes spot emerging trends before they even show up in the numbers.
Yes, because quantitative data, well, it looks backwards, right? It's based on historical information, what's already happened.
Hmm.
Qualitative research, because it's out there talking to people, observing behavior in real time in natural settings, it can pick up on subtle shifts, new needs, changing attitudes, things that haven't hit critical mass yet to register in the stats.
So it's like an early warning system.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Detecting those faint signals, those shifts in the human landscape before the quantitative seismographs pick up the tremor.
Wow. Okay, so it gives context, humanizes data, guides future research, and anticipates the future. That sounds incredibly useful. Let's make it more tangible. What are some real-world examples from the kinds of sources you saw?
Yeah, the materials had some good ones. Product development is a big area. Think about companies like Apple or Tesla, Dyson.
Okay.
They don't just look at sales figures, they actively use ethnographic studies. Researchers observing people using products in their everyday lives, and they do deep focus groups.
To understand the user experience properly.
Exactly. The pain points, the things people struggle with, maybe needs they can't even articulate yet. That deep human understanding often sparks those real innovations, the kind you wouldn't get just by crunching numbers.
Absolutely. Seeing the world through the user's eyes.
Huh.
And it's not just tech gadgets, right?
Yeah.
Healthcare seems like another area where this is vital.
Hugely important. In healthcare, quant data might give you, say, treatment success rates, statistics.
All right, the outcomes.
But qualitative research explores the patient's whole journey, their experience, their quality of life, issues with sticking to medication, the emotional side of things.
Yeah, the human side of being ill or getting treatment.
It gives a much more holistic human picture of what it actually means to navigate the healthcare system.
And then marketing and branding. This seems like a natural fit, trying to understand those deeper connections your sources talked about.
Definitely. Marketers use focus groups all the time, trying to get at the why behind consumer choices. How does a brand's message actually land emotionally? Your materials probably mention companies like Coca-Cola or Nike. They use things like narrative interviews, cultural immersion, trying to really understand people's stories, their values, what resonates culturally.
To build that emotional connection.
Yeah, it's about building a relationship, not just selling stuff.
And it even extends to policy making. That was interesting.
Yes, it gives governments, NGOs, a way to understand the lived reality of people affected by policies.
The statistic.
Exactly. To grasp what it's really like on the ground, make sure policies are actually meeting real needs and having the intended effect.
Okay, so clearly tons of value. But the sources also acknowledged some challenges, some criticisms that qualitative research faces. Subjectivity seems to be a big one.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. People sometimes dismiss findings as, just anecdotal or too subjective.
Right.
But it's important to remember, while interpretation is involved, there are rigorous methods. Strong frameworks exist to ensure reliability, validity. It's not just random chats.
So how do they ensure that rigor?
Well, things like triangulation, looking at the same question, using different data sources, maybe mixing qualitative and quantitative to see if the findings align, or rigorous thematic analysis protocols for finding patterns in the data systematically. It's a structured process.
Got it. And the resources needed. That was another point raised. It can be intensive.
Absolutely. Doing those in-depth interviews, running focus groups well, observing people carefully, it takes time. And you need skilled researchers not just to gather the data, but to analyze it properly afterwards.
Which means it can cost more, take longer than, say, sending out an automated online survey.
For sure. Compared to some quantitative methods, it can be more resource heavy.
And then bringing it all together.
Yeah.
Integrating the qualitative insights with the quantitative data. Yeah, that can be tricky too, right?
That's a really key challenge for a lot of places. You need a clear strategy. How do you triangulate effectively? Where do the insights line up? Where do they differ? How do they offer complementary views?
So you need a plan to make sense of it all.
Yeah, you need a way to build that cohesive picture from different angles.
But the future looks kind of bright, though. Your sources mentioned technology is actually helping out here.
Definitely. Take digital ethnography. With so much happening online now, social media, gaming communities, online shopping, researchers can study those digital spaces.
Observe online behaviors.
Exactly. Understand motivations, online cultures, decision-making in ways you just couldn't capture easily before, certainly not with quantitative data alone. It taps into where people are actually living large parts of their lives now.
Makes sense. And AI, how is that factoring in?
AI tools are really starting to change the game for analyzing qualitative data. They can process huge amounts of text, video, audio, much faster than humans.
How does that work? Like finding themes.
Yeah, using things like natural language processing, NLP, AI can identify recurring themes, patterns, even sentiment, positive, negative, neutral, and interview transcripts or open-ended survey answers. It doesn't replace the human researcher. You still need that deep interpretation, but it gives you a massive head start. It highlights areas to dig into.
Like a superpowered research assistant.
Pretty much, helping you sort through the noise to find the potential signals. And finally, your sources really stress the rise of mixed methods research.
Combining both approaches deliberately.
Yes, often the richest understanding comes from integrating qualitative and quantitative within the same study. You get the strengths of both.
The scale and precision of numbers.
And the depth and context from qualitative. It gives you that nuanced, holistic view. Your materials probably had examples like a company using a big survey for satisfaction scores,
Okay, the what?
and then doing follow-up interviews to understand the reasons behind those scores, the why.
Ah, right. Connecting the dots. And it's good to see big companies like Amazon or P&G are actually doing this, using mixed methods in their feedback loops or product testing.
Yeah, it shows it's practical, not just academic. They use customer feedback and home studies. They recognize they need both the big picture and the deep dive to really understand customers and innovate effectively.
Okay. So bringing it all together then, for you, our listener, it seems pretty clear. Qualitative research isn't fading away in our data-obsessed world. Not at all. It's still absolutely vital for getting at that crucial why and how behind the what that the numbers show us.
It provides the context, it humanizes the insights, it really drives innovation.
Precisely. It's that essential reminder that data ultimately isn't just numbers on a screen. It's about understanding people.
Yeah. And really understanding people, their experiences, their perspectives, means looking beyond the spreadsheet. It means engaging with the richness that qualitative approaches offer.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And it makes me wonder, maybe a final thought for you listening, how could you apply this kind of qualitative thinking in your own work or your own interests? Where could you maybe look past the surface numbers to understand the stories, the motivations, the deeper meaning behind the data you see every day?
It feels like in a world just drowning in data,
Yeah.
that ability to connect with the human element through qualitative insight is only going to become more valuable, not less.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.